Welcome to What the Mom podcast. You are listening to Doulas Petra
and Jacqueline.
Motherhood can be isolating and hard.
We are two doulas who want to provide a safe place to talk about all things mom,
From pregnancy
to birth,
to postpartum.
to parenting.
Join us as we have real conversations about real life.
Welcome to What the Mom podcast.
You are listening to Doulas Petra
And Jacqueline.
Thanks
Hi,
for
guys.
joining us today.
We
Today's-
what are we talking about?
Today we are talking about 5 first-time mom mistakes to avoid.
Oh, yes. Those are good ones. I'm sure there's a lot of them. Oh, my baby. Sorry, my baby's crying.
Oh.
If she's crying in the background, I apologize. We'll see how it goes. Keith might just go and shush her. Oh, he's going to go shush her right now.
That's mom life for you.
Yes.
There's probably more than 5.
We can
things
come
that-
up with some more. Yeah.
But I think we'll just go over some of like the top ones that we kind of think of, I think, more often, I guess.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking about something else before we start.
Mm-hmm.
This is our first episode for season 2. We're in a new year,
Oh, yeah.
which is pretty exciting. Episode number
Happy
20.
New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone. Pretty exciting.
Yeah. I cannot believe it. I just turned 35 yesterday. Crazy. Thanks.
Okay, so now we can get into it.
Yeah.
So our first time mom mistake that you want to avoid is just doing whatever the OBGYN or midwife says without knowing why you're doing it.
Yes.
So midwives are better at this, I find, with explaining kind of the pros and cons of doing everything and why you're doing it.
Absolutely.
Doctors, it's a hit or miss, and a lot of them tend to overlook that part. They're not as good at informed consent sometimes.
They do things without saying sometimes. Yes, I've had friends that have experienced that. Yep.
It's important to know why you're doing everything you do, and you don't have to do it just because a doctor said you should do it.
Yeah.
So this goes for any of the tests during pregnancy. This goes for any interventions during birth. This goes for anything during a checkup to your baby. Like everything, you have to remember, they are working for you. You're not working for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're always allowed to know if you want to.
Yes. Absolutely. And you know what? I didn't really know that. It's like, especially my first birth, but like, that's another reason why you get a midwife, because they let you choose. Like, I remember I have a friend who I was talking to her about like checks during birth and like during pregnancy. And she's like, "Oh yeah, we just started doing cervical checks at like 36 weeks." And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "What? Isn't that like normal? Isn't that like standard protocol?" I'm like, "No, you don't have to." And she's like, "What? I didn't know that." But the thing is that it is kind of true if you have a doctor, because the thing is, unfortunately, is they have to do things for, what is it? I can't even think of the word. What's the word, Petra? Like, I cannot think of the word.
Liability.
For like standard protocol and like liability. Yes. Apparently this is true with doctors. So I didn't know that. So it's another great reason why I'm thankful that I went with midwife. I don't really know if it's all doctors, but this is just what she told me. So Yeah. It's a
I
little
have
bit
heard
more
that.
natural.
Yeah, I have heard that from many people too, that they kind of just do stuff and they don't realize. Like I
Okay, so I'm
remember,
not the only one that thinks that. Okay.
yeah. My sister, I remember her second baby. I went to go visit them in the hospital, and the nurse came in and said something about, oh, it's time to give the baby a bath. Like just a blanket statement instead of
Yeah.
asking the parents. And they didn't know if they really wanted to give the baby a bath right away.
Yeah.
And then I said to them, because I could tell that they were kind of not sure how to respond. I was in the room and I said, you guys know it's up to you. You can do it on your own or you can say no if you want to. So then they're like, oh, okay, maybe just bring us to some and then we could do it ourselves. And then afterwards, that's exactly what the nurse did. And then afterwards, oh, we didn't know that that was an option. We thought you just had to let them do it. I'm like, no, you don't have to let them do anything.
Yeah.
Your
It's
baby, your
true.
choice.
Yeah. It is true. And if you don't have education knowing, that's why we wanted to share this kind of stuff, is that yeah, you don't know if you're not educated. And it's definitely something that a lot of people would have wanted to know.
Yeah.
And if you're just going into it and you have no experience, then that can make things difficult and it's harder to use your voice and
Yeah.
know what you're allowed to do, right? So, yeah, I think that's a great point.
Okay, well then point number 2 is spending more time on the nursery or a baby shower or anything else than you are on the postpartum planning.
Yeah, honestly, I think we all kind of do that. I did that. I was so caught up with everything else, and then when the baby comes, it can be tough if you're not educated on things with postpartum,
Mm-hmm. It's true.
you know?
I think it's kind of similar to people saying, like when you get married, you spend all of this time and energy on the wedding, but you also really need to focus on the marriage. It's the same thing with a baby. Like you spend all this time during pregnancy on preparing this nursery and thinking about the fun baby shower,
Yes.
but you need to think about motherhood because life is about to change, whether you
Yeah.
like it or
Yeah. I was just talking to a new mom yesterday, and yeah, she even said, she's like, I like focused on having the room perfect and all these things. And then, baby comes and you kind of feel stuck, like it is something that absolutely, like, you should educate yourself and definitely be as prepared for everything to do with the baby. The same thing with, getting everything set up. Like you said, that's so important and it can save you a lot of stress.
not. Sure. And we do have a couple different episodes about postpartum care too.
Yes, we
If
do.
anyone's interested, you can look back in our other previous episodes. We have one on the
Mhm.
fourth trimester. We have one on, I can't remember what we called it, just postpartum something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have lots of wonderful information if you're wanting to know exactly how you prepare for that postpartum time.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of good nuggets in there.
Mhm. Yes. Okay, point number 3 is a mistake to avoid is obsessing on contraction timing in early labor.
Oh my gosh, I did that. And it's exhausting.
It is. I did too.
You're like, "What do you mean? I've been in labor and I've been having contractions for 2 days," and then they tell you you're a whole whopping 1 centimeter.
Yeah.
And you're like, "Are you freaking kidding me right now?"
Yeah, exactly. Well,
It's a thing. Yeah.
well,
Oh my
yeah, I
goodness.
feel like there's a couple reasons why you need to avoid it though, right? Because
Mhm.
number 1, you're probably going to get discouraged if you find out that you're not as far along as you think you are. Number 2, like you said,
Yeah.
it's just exhausting. And so you're not saving that energy that you need for when active labor actually starts. because early labor is the time where if it's nighttime, you need to be just relaxing.
Resting.
And if it's daytime, if it's daytime, you just rest or just kind of go about your day, like doing things that aren't going to be exhausting to you.
Mm-hmm.
But especially with your first baby, early labor can actually be a really long time, and timing it just makes it seem so much longer.
Yeah, it really does.
And I mean, some people can be in early labor for days. Yeah.
Would somebody please stand up? That was me.
Yeah, exactly.
All
and then
three
my third was like
times.
that.
All 3 times, Petra.
Yeah. So
Crazy.
think about it. If you were just timing it and waiting for active labor to start, it'd be so hard for you.
It was so hard for me. So I agree. It's good. It's like if you're in labor, yes, okay, it's good to know, okay, am I having contractions, whatever, awesome. But don't really get worried or worked up until they start to become more intense. You want the intensity. It doesn't necessarily mean about timing. And then when you are having like mild contractions, like Petra said, to rest as much as you can and not focus on them. And because, yeah, if you just are like, oh my goodness, I'm having contractions, little contractions, and they just keep happening, then, and you're not sleeping because you're just wide awake and you're just like, oh my goodness, what's happening? Then what happens is that when you're really in labor, you're going to be exhausted, and then it doesn't make any sense because that's when intervention stuff can happen. And yeah, the best thing, like you said, is to just focus on rest and don't worry about that.
Yeah.
I wish I would have done that. It would have made my life way easier.
Well, the other thing is contractions in early labor, they're not going to actually be like totally regular. They're not going to be like, okay, they're all 5 minutes apart.
No.
It's going to be like this one's 4 minutes and 32 seconds, and this one's 7 minutes and 15 seconds, and then this one was 6 minutes and 3 seconds. Like it's going to actually vary. And it's going to change depending on if you're sitting or if you're standing, right? Or if you're laying down.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
If you're doing lots of movement, trying to get labor going, they're going to come more regularly. And you could also get your hopes up thinking you're further along than you are.
You absolutely could. Or you could just be somebody who dilates really quickly and has a really high pain tolerance, or you just don't even know you're in labor, because I know people that's happened to also, and they're like just having a little bit of pain, and then all of a sudden they're 6 or 7 centimeters, and it's like,
that's
what? True. That doesn't always happen. Like for me, all of my labors were not like that, but Petra's was quite fast, the last one, and so you just never know.
But that was my 4th. My other ones weren't.
Yes, it was your 4th, absolutely. So you just never know. Somebody in their first could just go from 1 to 10 super quick. Like you don't know.
Most of the time, first labors are a little bit longer, but there's been people that did have quick first labors, so you never know.
I know someone just told me like 2 hours or something crazy from the first contraction. It was their first baby. So you just never know.
So timing, I would say timing is beneficial if you just want to know, okay, am I actually in labor?
Yeah.
But obsessing over it is a whole different story, and you don't want to do that.
No.
Yeah.
What our biggest takeaway here is, when you have mild contractions, just rest. Because they will get intense and they will get tiring, and you just want to wait. That's our advice.
And first time moms, they always think, oh, maybe like I just have a really high pain tolerance and I just can't tell like I'm in, like active labor yet. And the truth is that's a very small minority that don't know they're that far along.
That's true. It is a very small, It's
the
not
majority, the majority of people will know, and there will be a difference between that early labor and active labor and hitting that transition period, because it gets so intense that you can't be having a contraction and have a conversation through it at all. Whereas in early labor, you sometimes can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good point too.
I would say that's kind of like a key point to look at for the majority of people if you're not the exception.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so our fourth mistake to avoid: going into the hospital, or if you're having a home birth, or in that case, calling the birth team too early in labor.
It can slow things down.
It can.
And also, this is what I've learned in my doula training, that you don't want to call your doula too early, because you don't want to exhaust them before, right? Like if you really need a doula to come early, like obviously we care about what kind of pain you're in and we want to support you anyway, but it's also good to wait, And so, yeah, I think that it can also, it's good to like, I think for me, it just like having somebody there, it kind of just slowed things down. I wonder if it would have been different if I would have just been by myself and like focused and not being, told to do things. I don't know. Who knows? So I think that some people, they can progress quickly, but also they're busy also, and you just have to have like a boundary when to call.
Yeah.
That's what I would think, being in labor.
And if you're going into the hospital, you can't even be admitted until you're a certain
I think
point.
it's 3 centimeters.
It might actually even be 5.
Is it 5? Isn't that active labor though? Or
Yeah,
is
that's
it,
they want you to be in active labor, I think.
what? Okay, maybe it's changed, but from my friends they said like 3, but still.
I'm pretty sure when I went in with my first with Ondor, it was 5. I got admitted early because I had high blood pressure, though.
Oh, yeah, maybe because you had high blood pressure.
But normally,
we can always clarify that, but
yeah, normally they said they would have wanted me to wait longer. But if you're having a hospital birth, you check with your doctor to see what the rules are surrounding that. Yeah. But either way, if you're not at whatever point it is that they say you need to be, then you
they
actually
send you home.
Turned away and you have to go home. Like, how annoying would that be? You're literally in labor, having contractions. You're all ready. You get to the hospital and then you're turned away and like, oh, go back home and come back later.
Yeah, it would just be more annoying. Yeah.
And I know with midwives, especially doing a home birth, they tend to not worry as much about the exact dilation, but they go by how you're acting. So, like, are you able to call them yourself and talk during a contraction, or are you not able to anymore, right? Like we kind of just talked about in the last point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And like you said, Jacqueline, having someone else there can slow things down. In fact, a lot of people don't realize this when I tell them about it, but you can actually go back in dilation. Didn't you have that happen?
I did. My midwife didn't tell me until after she was born. But I was 6 centimeters, and then it was a whole 7 hours later. It was like midnight, they broke my water, and then 7 a.m. came. And when she checked me, I was like 5. So I was actually going backwards. So, yes, it can.
Yeah.
Like the stress, it will
Yeah.
make you swell and close up. Yeah.
When you think about it, back in the day before we were like domesticated and we just kind of lived outside, we had to think about the dangers around us. And
Mhm.
if you were a laboring woman and there was something like a dangerous animal nearby, you don't want to stay there and give birth to your baby. Your body's going to stop. It's going to wait until it's safe for this baby to come.
Yeah.
So it
Absolutely.
actually makes sense. Like it's just instinctual. It's something that our body just does.
Yeah.
And if you watch any animal, what do? They actually go and they hide. They go into a corner. They go and they hide somewhere. Like cats are great at doing that. They always find the little spots that are hidden away to go
Yeah,
give birth.
it's true. Yeah.
And so humans, the only reason that we have all these people around is because we've medicalized birth.
Mhm. It's true.
So
And don't get me wrong, sometimes you do need the hospital.
yeah,
And like in my
birth is so bad.
situation, I still needed, my baby needed oxygen. And, it just wouldn't have been great if you were at home because due to the COVID restrictions, they would have sent her on an ambulance by herself. So that would have been super traumatizing and stuff. And so it's like my body knew and knew that I had to get to the hospital before I had her, even though I was in labor forever.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I've heard lots of people say that it can slow your labor, and it has in the past for people. So the best thing is, labor as much as you can on your own with your spouse or whatever, and then when things get intense, then, you'll know when to call.
The important thing is making sure that you're comfortable because you're the one who needs to be comfortable. You're having a baby.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said, like having a doula, there has to be boundaries, but also if you're like, you could be somebody who just goes into labor and just has contractions every 2 minutes, and it could be a day and a half. And obviously, we want to support you the best we can too. So, I mean, I guess it just depends on the situation.
That's the beautiful thing about birth, though. Every birth is so different.
All different. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
so mistake number 5 to avoid is comparing your pregnancy, birth, or postpartum experience to other people.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
something a lot of people tend to do, whether they realize it or not, I think.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people call it the mom trap or the mom comparison.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just so easy to do, right? Because you think, oh, like say starting in pregnancy. It's like, oh, well, what's normal in pregnancy? That's like a very common thought for us to have, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it. But then if you know other people who are pregnant around the same time, it's easy to compare yourself and say, oh, like I'm really sick and they have no morning sickness, or vice versa. Or thinking about, I don't know how, oh, their hair is growing so fast and so long and mine's like falling out. Like we all do it differently. And then same thing with the way our births
Yeah.
go. We all
Yeah.
birth different. And once you have your baby, every baby is so different. They all have different personalities.
Hmm.
Um, they grow at different rates. Like one baby might be a fast walker while the other baby might talk early. Like it just,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. It's good
comparing.
to vent to people, like if you want to talk to somebody about your birth and stuff, but just to know that you have a unique story and that it happened
Yeah.
the way it did for a reason. And I was just talking to a mom, and she really wanted to give birth vaginally, and she ended up pushing for 4 hours and then had to have an emergency C-section where they knocked her out, and she wasn't awake for it and hadn't really spoke about it. And then I kind of was sharing, just talking to her, and she opened up and was like, I guess I do have, like some trauma from that. And it's important, to like share your feelings and stuff, but also know that no matter what happened in that situation, whether it was an inexperienced doctor that was telling the woman to push or whatever, or there was a student or whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Like, you can't beat yourself up over something that happened, and we just have to be like super there for each other and encouraging one another, and being there in their corner, and it's not about comparing. It's just about, making each other feel good about our experiences, and knowing that you can have a different experience next time, or you might not have a very good experience the next time. You never know.
That's very
Like you
well
said, it's all different. You can't predict birth.
And every baby is also very different. So maybe you're able to breastfeed your first baby,
Yeah.
second baby, you just can't for whatever reason, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
not being able to. If something happens, then
Yeah.
it happens, right? You can't beat yourself up over it. Or maybe
Yeah.
you have one baby that like seems to do everything early, all the milestones, and then the next one is kind of on the later end of that, like what they consider normal spectrum.
Yeah.
Well, that's still fine too. It's just that baby just has a different personality. Some of them are like go-getters and they want to do stuff fast. And the other ones just take their time and they just kind of enjoy themselves. And
Yeah,
they're all,
absolutely.
yeah, as long as they're developing properly and they're healthy, then that's what matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You just never know. They're all so different. My son, he walked at, I don't know, 11 months, and my daughter, my second, was 8. And it was just crazy. And then the last one was 10. So you just never know. Just never know. I think Ben was talking earlier, and Lorelai's starting to talk now, but it's taken her longer. And yeah, babies are all different. They're not all the same. Like you said, it is what it is. And it will happen eventually.
So we don't want to do. Instead, we just want to learn to encourage. So these are
Yes.
kind of just 5 things that are common for new moms to tend to do, whether they realize it or not. A lot of times happen just subconsciously, and you don't even notice that you're doing it. Especially that last point about comparing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
But the more you know, the easier it is to deal with stuff as they come up.
Yeah. And that's why we're here.
Exactly.
To share our wisdom.
So hopefully you guys were able to learn something from this today. And if you haven't yet, make sure you click the like button, you subscribe and follow, and share our podcast with other people as well who you think that might benefit from it.
Yeah, we would love that.
So,
Well,
until next time,
what
like
the
the mom?